How to dream, cowboys.
Welcome back to the first episode of our Westworld Season 1 Rewatch podcast. Tonight we're going to be going through episode 1 of Season 1 and talking about what stands out to us and what we still love. I'm James.
And I'm Ryan. And this is the Westworld podcast.
So it's been a while since we've come out with a full episode. We did a little bit of an update on Season 2 progress, and we had our Western Movie Club going for a while, but now we're going to try something different.
Yeah, we're going to, over time on a not exactly set schedule, rewatch a little bit of Season 1. I don't know about you, James, but I actually haven't watched any of Season 1 since the end of it, so long ago, and now that Westworld is perhaps far in our future, not as far as it might have been, teaser, but it is not, right now. They haven't even shot it yet. They'll probably start shooting it this summer, but now that it's a little far away, it was interesting to go back and watch Season 1, Episode 1. There were, right as it started, there were a lot of things that popped into my mind that I remembered that I really enjoyed and I was waiting for, but there was also a bunch of stuff that I had forgotten happened. It was fun.
Yeah, and going back and watching the first episode, and it was a pilot, right? I don't think the show had been fully planned out when they had produced this pilot. There's a lot of stuff where I wonder, hey, was that planned from the very beginning, or were they kind of playing it loose?
Yeah, I feel like most of the storylines were pretty fleshed out. I think it was pretty obvious that the Man in Black storyline was not as fleshed out as it could have been in that moment, because he says some pretty vague things if you go back, when he's first introduced to us, he's just saying vague things about how he's been here a while and he plays the game different, and it's a very, he feels a little distant, like a Darth Vader distant in the beginning, and in that moment you're like, the way you get fleshed out over the next 10 episodes, and you can say fleshed out, or if you think about it in a negative fashion, you could just say forced into the dark side within 10 episodes very quickly, from being Jimmy Simpson to being Ed Harris, smiling while he gets shot at the end there, finally confirming that this is what he's lived his entire life for. It's hard to get there and then go back to Season 1 Episode 1 and be like, it feels like as he's dragging her into the bar and you're like, I just don't know what's going on.
Yeah, before we jump right into it, there's a few things we should touch on that we brought up last week. That writer's strike everyone was really worried about did not come to pass.
Sheesh. Thank gosh. We'll move on with our lives, but they came down to a resolution near the end of it. There wasn't an actual writer's strike, which everyone was pretty it was definitely going to happen there for a day or two, and then the next day they're like, we figured it out. Everything is fine.
Also, this is not strictly related to Westworld, but disappointing news for fans of the Western genre in general. Red Dead Redemption 2 has been delayed until 2018.
That sucks. I wanted to play a Let's Play and put it on a YouTube channel. It was gonna be the best. Now that it's been pushed back, that's. I mean, I'm psyched for them to make a good game, but come on, give me it.
Well, there's another game coming out called The Wild West Online, and it's just going to be like an MMO, like your World of Warcraft, but in the Wild West. So Red Dead Redemption meets Westworld, but not in a sci-fi setting. The MMO.
Yeah, like Westworld Second Life. I'll try it out. I'll go Black Hat. Best 2 weeks of my life.
Yeah, well, I'll do the free month or whatever if they offer that.
Yeah.
Yeah, jumping right into episode 1, we have that where they're trying to trick us in the very beginning, where it's like, oh, maybe Teddy's a person, and he's coming back to the park to see the robot that he loves. But once we understand the rules of the park, we know that's not possible. The hosts don't remember the newcomers. They're on like a loop, so they wouldn't recognize you if you had come back when their loop had restarted.
Yeah, it's all a cruel joke. As we eke into the episode, we see the theme song, the sounds of said theme song flood into your brain and release endorphins, letting you know that you remember how this song goes, the chord progression washing over you, etc., etc. Like a bunch of violence is happening, robot horse, you're like, this is sick. And then, exactly as you just said, we're in the beginning. It's that part where within the trailer, we didn't know if it was Bernie or if it was Ashley Stubbs. It turns out in the end that they're both talking to Dolores. They're just giving her the AI test so that they can bookend it at the end when they ask her all the questions now. And she's like, yeah, everything's fine. I wake up and my eyes are bright and everything's cool. And my dad's here and he's not different yet because he's just still fine. He's Peter Abernathy 1. We all love him. He's going to be a series regular next year, actually, the guy who played Peter Abernathy 1, who was in cold storage, but as we know, there isn't anything in cold storage anymore. And then as you just said, exactly, they pulled the switcheroo on us. James Marsden / Teddy Flood is basically there to keep Dolores in her loop, right? I mean, he's basically assigned to Dolores, except for when a frat guy asks him to bring him around. Then everything changes.
One thing I like about this episode that I kind of picked up on right away is there's no crazy timeline nonsense. Jimmy Simpson isn't even here, so we don't have to worry about, like, what timeline are we in? When Dolores is talking to Bernard, we can safely say that's Bernard and not Arnold. There's no weird time distortion happening.
No, in fact, there's only one mention of Arnold in the first episode, and it's by the guy who has all the milk come out of his bullet holes. Remember that guy?
Yeah.
He goes insane. That's the only part where he's just like, I'm not going to die this time, Arnold, which you can assume Arnold's responding to him like, okay, man, you do what you got to do.
Just keep fucking shit up, dude. You're doing great.
Exactly, but like to your point, there are eventually like 3 timelines, right? At some point, there are 3 places we are, and not in the pilot. The pilot is one place, and then the second episode comes back around, and we meet Jimmy Simpson, and we're like, oh well, I wonder what happened to him in the next 9 episodes. I bet it's not. I bet it turns him evil. Moving on.
So I had remembered later into the series, we were like, oh, maybe the Man in Black's not so bad. In episode 1, he wasn't dragging Dolores off to rape her. He was dragging her off to interrogate her about the maze.
It seems a lot like he's going to rape her.
Yeah, going back
Rewatching
to episode 1, it seems like it was wishful thinking that we're trying to...
I don't know. I recall that because like when 8 episodes in, you're like, he can't be that bad. He's Jimmy Simpson. Jimmy Simpson's a nice guy. But you're right. As I saw him dragging her that time, I was like, I honestly think he's gonna do some weird stuff to her. Come on, aw.
Yeah, after we got to know them, we wanted to like William / the Man in Black, but it seems like he's an evil motherfucker and he's just doing evil shit. You gotta remember, he didn't really care about the hosts that much until when he was attacking Maeve and her children for funsies. He kind of had a revelation like, oh, maybe they're people.
Right, like for a good time. Which is later in the season. And before that, he like perhaps sexually abuses his best robot friend who he doesn't even care about anymore. But I really like that. We were literally put into a fugue by Jimmy Simpson's acting ability where we were like, we just kind of want to like him. So I'm sure he didn't do anything wrong, but you're right. You watch it back, you're like, gosh, I feel like he's going to rape her. Yeah, that is disappointing.
Yeah, he's a sadist. He's evil. That's like the quality that his suicidal wife saw in him, and that's why she did it. killed herself, that is. So, Man in Black, bad guy. Pure evil.
Yeah, he is not a good one. I really enjoyed that the first little part of this, watching it again before the blackout, where, you know, as you were saying before, Teddy comes in and it's before the switcheroo, so we're supposed to know that he's or supposed to think that he's not a robot, as like Dolores says, like, you came back. He's like, obviously I did. And then they're up in the hills and he's like, how do those steer work? And she's like, I remember you dress like a cowboy, but you really don't know. Like, that's apparently just part of his backstory, is that he's a bad cowboy, except for all the parts where he has a weathered past. He's a better cowboy then, but when it comes to steer roping, he's not any good. But then, like, even more importantly than that, 7 minutes in, we get to see Clementine Pennyfeather Best's name. She's amazing. Remember when I actually watched. Remember when Elsie steals the kiss from her? And in that moment, actually, I remembered it as, like, Elsie stole the kiss from her and then was, like, slightly disappointed by what she did. But on the rewatch, that's not true at all. She steals the kiss from her and she's like, yeah, fun.
Yeah, and initially you and I had been like, oh, that's gonna come back. That's something that's gonna play into something. Nah.
Not at all. Never again. In fact, we don't even know if Elsie's alive. We don't know if Elsie's alive for what? Like, she was literally gone for 2 or 3 episodes. She disappeared in that weird, creepy building, and we were hoping, like, maybe it was Bernard, like a nice Bernard who came and got her, but it was also a little weird meeting Teresa within the first episode again, while she was being nice to Bernard. In fact, she was calling him Bernie, kind of foreshadowing the fact that they're sleeping together. And right when they meet each other, the moment you meet Teresa, she's talking to Bernard, and you're like, I don't know if you should be talking to him. He does eventually kill you.
Yeah. You can kind of see that they have, like, a little bit of, like, a Jack and Diane from Cheers, like, oh, will they, won't they vibe going on. Later on, Teresa makes some expression and Bernard's like, wow, I really like that face you're making. Can I use that? Can I copy that and put it into the host? And she's like, no, that's weird. Leave me alone.
Yeah, she's justifiably like, you should actually get away from me. I'm still gonna sleep with you, but you actually, and in that moment you feel dumb. You're like, of course he's a robot. Of course. We also get to see the beginning of the Reverie's plan. We got to see the little conversation between Bernard and Anthony Hopkins, Dr. Robert Ford, where Bernard's trying to talk to him about how the Reveries is what's causing all these things to go wrong, and Dr. Robert Ford says, you know, you'll have to grant me a few mistakes every now and again. You know, humanity was built on mistakes. Also within that conversation, he also says, like, is this the best humans can be? You can literally hear within this conversation, Dr. Robert Ford did do this on purpose. It wasn't a mistake. This is the beginning of his world genocide plan, and he knows exactly what's going on. So, and in the beginning, you remember, like, when we were like, we think Dr. Robert Ford is just like a crazy old man. We literally thought that for like 3 episodes.
And he, that is Anthony Hopkins, his performance is so chilled out and understated in this episode, and it gets so over the top later on. And it happens, you know, like we said, the first 3 episodes were just like, oh, it's just some weird old guy. He plays it so well, going from like, I'm just an eccentric, sweet old man, to like, I'm full on crazy and maybe I'm going to take over the world.
Yeah, because when you watch that scene with Dr. Robert Ford and Bernard talking about perhaps Dr. Robert Ford's mistake that he made in this Reverie code, you can see at the end when Bernard walks away, Dr. Robert Ford's face is like, it's all coming to plan. And then we go to the cooling systems was broken in floor 83, and Ashley Stubbs and a bunch of guns plus Bernard go down to cold storage, which again, as we know in the future, becomes very empty. But we get to see Dr. Robert Ford talking to the white bearded dude who is drinking to the girl with the white shoes. And I don't know, I'm just naming things I liked now. But and that was the same scene where he zips himself up into his own body bag. It's creepy.
Here's something. If you're not familiar with the YouTube channel Film Theory, you should check out, I think it was last month, the episode they had on the location of Westworld, where they decided that it's under the sea, a la BioShock, which had a city, Rapture, completely under the sea. And he's saying that's one of the reasons why, like, that's one of the reasons why the chamber is filling with water, is maybe there's a small leak and they don't care because they're not using these chambers anymore.
I still, like, I don't know why, but I still do want it to be in Antarctica. I, like, romantically want that. I want it to have, like, the weird climate change angle where Antarctica is like a mesa, the mesa that they use, and it's just there's no snow anymore. We don't really need snow. We figured it out. Everywhere is water because it used to be snow.
So we get some silly scenes of these rando newcomers who are only in this one episode, and I like that. It reminds me a little bit of the original movie, where we've just got these minor characters who are guests in the park, and they're not that consequential.
Are you talking about the weird couple? The weird, but the couple who ruins Hector's speech?
Yeah, they go on a little trip, and the host that's guiding them has a freak out when a fly lands on his face, and I thought, like, oh, so maybe he wants to smack the fly? That's his first instinct, but he can't, and so he bugs out.
Yeah, that actually could be it, because there is a lot of... The fly is obviously a catalyst, you know? Every time we see James Marsden's Teddy... Actually, we see James Marsden's Teddy outside of, like, the brothel that he took all the frat boys to, and one of the guys is like, he creeps me out, and then it goes to him, and there's a fly on his eye, and he's just smiling and not smacking it, and the other guy's like, yeah, he's creepy, but he brings us places. So yeah, the fly is obviously a catalyst, because as you know, I mean, it's the thing that's at the end of the episode, before the blackout. Dolores hits the fly, and you're like, oh man, everything's about to go poorly. And as you said, that fly in that moment, that's cool. I didn't think about that. Also, did you get the feeling that Lee Sizemore is like the Simon Cowell of Westworld?
I was also gonna say, like, he's in a lot of this episode, and then he's not, like, in a lot of the show.
No, I mean, but they use him a lot to just say exposition, just to say the exposition. Like that one scene with Teresa where he's like, I'm giving you my full whatever, and she's like, you can see that there's a bigger plan management has, which, by the way, they haven't mentioned yet, although I still posit that it's the conscious switching thing based on that little speech that Anthony Hopkins did where he asked Bernard if this is the best humans can be. I still think it's that conscious switching thing where they take people's old bodies and put them into robots so that they're immortal. I don't know. It could be anything, but that's my guess. And Teresa's like, you don't even know. And then Lee Sizemore's like, that's true. I've said all of the plot that I could think of, so this scene's over now. Put out your cigarette in an interesting yet condescending way.
The big thing that happens in the middle of the episode is when the psychopath host kills Sideburns Trevor because he's angry about him over something that happened in a previous timeline, and then he goes berserk and shoots up everyone in the bar and then pours milk on them because I guess that's what Arnold's telling him to do. He's like, good, now pour milk on that guy.
Oh, yeah, that's good. That's a good milk pour, dude. Oh, don't get shut down. Don't get shut down. They're coming. Oh, you did it. You let yourself get shut down. This happens every time. I like to think of Arnold as like super annoyed the robots aren't doing exactly what he wants them to do.
Bernard is so nonchalant about all the weird shit happening in the park, and I'm wondering, like, yeah, that's your programming. You're not supposed to kick up a fuss or interrupt the plan in any way.
I actually had that same idea every time I heard Peter Abernathy 1 and Dolores talk, especially like in the beginning when they're talking on the porch before she goes into town. I was like, this sounds so scripted. And I was like, it's because it is scripted, but also like there aren't any park goers next to them listening to them, which I just found weird. It's a tree falling in a forest. Like, they'll always have that conversation about going out and painting at the beginning of the day, no matter what. That's just what's happening, and it doesn't matter if anyone's there. I just found that super odd. It's so neat.
Then the Man in Black's doing more fucked up shit. He's draining blood from hosts. That's something that he does a couple times in the show.
Yeah, he actually counts the amount of liters of blood he took out of Kizzy, I believe his name is, the little guy from the dealer from the saloon. And then he scalps him, and a picture of the maze is there, to which you, I guess after watching all of season 1, you have to ask yourself, like, hey, Dr. Robert Ford, why did you put that there? I assume for someone to find it. So I assume for this moment is why you put it there. That feels weird. It feels weird. Why would you do that?
And then Dolores meets up with her dad in the morning, and her dad has William's fiance's picture from 30 years ago. He just happened to find it, and it's just a huge coincidence.
I still hate it. I really do. I don't like that part at all. Why does William have a picture of his sister on him? Why did he drop it? Did he drop it purposely? Why did they never go back and tell us any of those questions and or answers? No, he just has it and he's going insane, which is fine because it leads to a wonderful acting moment between Peter Abernathy 1 and Dr. Robert Ford. But that feels like the laziest part of this pilot by far.
Yeah, I think it is meant to just be one huge coinkydink, and there's no really deeper meaning behind it, I guess. It is weird that Logan has a picture of his sister, and he gives it to William, and I don't know, 30 years later, just turns up again.
Yeah, just to be in the right spot at the right time. We should also talk about there are, I think, 3 songs on the player piano within the pilot. One of them, the Black Hole Sun cover, is I think I agreed that the first time I watched the pilot, it was the moment where it finally sold the show to me, where I was like, okay, this show is actually wonderful. But also the first song that plays on the player piano is Black Hole Sun by Soundgarden, which has a bit of a new context because Chris Cornell killed himself last week.
Yeah, well, I didn't make that connection as I was rewatching the episode, but shit, rest in peace.
Yeah. So yeah, that part is sad, but it is great on the player piano, and it was fun, like, because I didn't remember that it was coming. It felt like a nice little. Now it feels like a nice little tribute. I know it wasn't back then because he was alive when that happened, but either way.
Yeah, the next big soundtrack thing is when they do the orchestral version of Paint It Black during the big shootout, which they're, all the robots are freaking out. So like, we'll find the ones that freak out and kill them in this big event.
Right, the same event where Hector has a great end speech that Lee writes for him, and then that gets stopped completely by the weird couple who I shot him in the neck. Go get the photographer. It's actually, I think I think that's the funniest part of the pilot. I really like that part. I thought it was annoying the first time I saw it, but actually the way that it just messed up that moment, and for Lee mostly, I just like to see Lee sad.
Yeah, it plays with your expectations, which is in a funny way, and it reminds me of the 1973 movie where like the really geeky old dude is like, I'm the sheriff in these parts now.
Yeah. We get actually a reference to that movie when Dr. Robert Ford is talking to the old cowboy on level 83, where he says, just a simple handshake back then could have let you know that they were a robot, which is just a straight callback to the movie. Also, I want to talk about the few times that characters grab themselves, like Dolores grabs herself in the abdomen when she sees Hector, remembering maybe perhaps that she gets shot there. Teddy grabs himself on the chest the day after he gets shot in the chest. Teddy, a robot that has not heard these violent delights have violent ends. In fact, that virus that starts from Peter Abernathy 1 because of the picture, which is why it really does irk me that picture thing happened and that it's so weird, is because they're like claiming it to be the catalyst. It's the reason why Dolores hears these violent delights have violent ends, but she's the only one who's actually heard it in the pilot, and has the ability to hit a fly at the end. But a few of the characters, at least Dolores and Teddy, are both like, due to the reveries, feeling parts of themselves like, I think I got shot here.
Yeah, and you're hinting at what we talked about as the best scene in the episode when it aired, and it still holds true for me. The confrontation between Peter Abernathy 1 and Anthony Hopkins towards the end of the episode.
The huge part that's actually, as the episode started, I said out loud to myself, oh yeah, I get to watch that scene between Peter Abernathy and Anthony Hopkins. It was the first thing I thought of. I was like, because that scene is just so good. It was the one where, everybody tweeted at Louis Hertham, and he had like 2,000 followers, and he was just like, thanks everybody, thank you. And now he's going to be a series regular, and he was on Narcos. Like, his career, it was revitalized because he stood toe to toe with Anthony Hopkins, and he did such an amazing job. That's so good. Also, by the way, during that time is when Dolores is being asked questions, and it's the first time she lies to Ashley Stubbs.
And then the end of the episode's pretty good too. Dolores is like, comes out and she sees her new dad, but it's all the same to her. We get the first shot of the maze. We get to see that on the inside of the scalp.
Sure. Why is that there? But sure.
Yeah, that is never addressed, and it makes no sense.
No, it doesn't.
All right, so
why would you put it there, Dr. Robert Ford?
Yeah. When we 3D print the new robots, I want you to put this special design on the inside of their scalp. Why?
So that
Dr.
someone
Ford?
can find it. So that they can find it. It's a little puzzle I'm doing.
And yeah, the ending is brilliant. Fly lands on Dolores' face. Smack.
These violent delights have violent ends, James. I think Dolores is Neo. I think she's the one. And she can now actually hurt a fly. So what else can she do? Question mark.
Yeah, it's a good way to end off, I thought.
Oh no, it's a wonderful way. I mean, it makes you ask so many questions and kind of makes you forget the little inconsistencies that just happened.
I'm interested. I didn't pick up on people like touching their wounds. Now I feel like I need to go back and watch it a third time because I missed that this time around. But yeah, that leads up to Maeve pulling the bullet out of her body. So, maybe they're a little bit careless, Felix and Sylvester, when they're repairing them. They're like, that bullet's not really messing, and just leave it there.
After this pilot, we don't even know who they are yet. We haven't met a bunch of the characters that that are most of the first season. We also see at the end that Peter and Milkman go into cold storage. Remember, Bernie whispers something to Peter as he goes in, and at some point I think we knew what he whispered him. It was something like, "You done well," or "someday," or I don't know. It was like a robot to robot thing, perhaps. And then Peter looks like he's crying even after he was lobotomized, which is like, why? I don't know. I mean, I guess he's lobotomized. Like, is that going to affect him, or are they just going to forget that when he comes back as a series regular? They're like, oh no, he's fine.
The decommissioned hosts are the lucky ones. They get to be the vanguard of the robot revolution, and they get to shoot the man in black in the arm.
I know, and they get to come out of the woods in that amazing scene 10 episodes from now as Dolores slaps her neck and the fly dies, one of many deaths to come. There Ain't No Grave by Johnny Cash comes on, and you're like, oh, y'all are picking songs, dude. Good songs.
Second time around, I thought this episode is still, highly entertaining. A lot of rewatch value, I thought. There's a lot of little things you can pick up on. Not too much, though. Because they're so cagey with the details, there's not so much, overtly at least. I mean, you've mentioned the wound touching, and that's really interesting to me now, but there isn't so much where you can be like, oh, hey. And that's because they don't want you to figure it out early.
Right. I mean, I think most of that is they really don't dive into the Man in Black storyline at all. You don't know about Jimmy Simpson's character. You don't know about there are 3 timelines, which is like the main thing that people focused on all year. Which timeline are we in at any given moment? And does Jimmy Simpson become Ed Harris, which it becomes obvious later in the season that he does. But, I mean, we haven't met Logan. We haven't met young William. We haven't met Sebastian. We haven't met Leonard Nahum's character, Felix. We met Armistice and Hector, but we don't really know anything about them. We got to see that cool scene where they shot stuff, but we don't know their deal. We don't know Hector's deal because he gets shot in the neck before he gets to say it out loud. And like you said, I really like this pilot. I liked it the first time I watched it. I liked it this time I watched it too. It did allow for some moments to be a bit more annoying than they were the first time because I know how they end. But it also did allow for some moments to be a lot more interesting, a lot more foreshadowy than I thought they were. And it reminds me of the characters that I like the most. And I'm glad that Peter Abernathy 1 is coming back to the series because he's a bright, shining part of this pilot. And it makes me sad that, we might not get to see Anthony Hopkins again. As you might remember, Dolores slaps him like the fly he is as a part of his plan. So, will we see Anthony Hopkins again? I don't know.
What about you out there listening? Have you rewatched any of the show since it first aired? What are your thoughts on episode 1? And hey, hit us up before we record episode 2 at a undetermined date, and we'll read your comments on the show.
Yeah, it's not a rhetorical question. Answer us. As you might know, James is currently in Japan with a little baby boy.
Little baby
boy, James. You have one. You got a little baby boy, and I'm on the East Coast of the United States. I don't have a baby. I have a podcast, so same thing basically. James has both. Whatever, greedy is what he is. But he has a little baby who has been very, very nice almost this whole time while we were recording.
Yeah, he was all right. Send us.
He was fine. Whatever.
Yes, send us a tweet at Westworld Ryan. You can email us at thewestworldpodcast@gmail.com. We read everything, and we typically read everything on the show. So if you've got anything related to Westworld, or you just tell us about your day, whatever.
Yeah, we got a few, 4 or 5 likes on our tweet that we were doing anything this week. Honestly, anything more than 0 always surprises me. Although we do have 3 or 4 very dedicated fans that make us feel very special, and we appreciate it. But yeah. Everyone should probably go back and watch the pilot with us. Go see if you can find some stuff that we didn't notice and tell us about it. And then as we go into season 1, episode 2 at a later date, maybe just go ahead and watch season 1, episode 1 and 2. The first one being the original, referring to Dolores most likely, and number 2 being Chestnut. Oh, Chestnut. What's the top? Hold on. I want to see what the top Reddit comment on Chestnut is. It is, well, is there anything you like about it? What size are his boots? And then Dr. Ford steals the boots. Oh, yeah, when Dr. Ford steals the boots from Lee Sizemore's new, what is it? He's like, this is my new thing. Everyone in the park it's a new storyline. And then Robert Ford's like, that's bad, but I do like the boots. So yeah, everyone watch season 1 episode 2.
Check out those awesome boots.
I like those boots.
Yeah, thanks everyone for listening. If you're just listening, it means a lot to us. If you want to go the extra mile, you can follow us on Twitter, you can follow us on SoundCloud, or if you're really cool, you could leave us a nice review on iTunes. That'll help other people find us.
We're actively trying to count how many times Teddy dies. We need help.
And catch us sometime in the future for our rewatch of episode 2. I'm James.
And I'm Ryan. And this is the Westworld Podcast.
Be